Welcome, Michigan Innovation Podcast audience. So excited to be with you today here in April, and we've got snow on the ground and actually a snow day here on April 2nd in Cadillac. Can you believe it? But that being said, we are so happy that we have Andrew Stafford with us from Manistee's Chamber of Commerce. How you doing today?
Pretty good. Can't complain. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Well, we tried to do this in December and we had a snow day. And so when we had another snow day today, I was not going to call it. I said, well, if Andrew can make it over, we're going to go for it. And you were brave enough to.
I was determined to get here.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. And I'm sure everyone out there does too. And so Andrew Stafford is the Director of Economic Development, correct?
Correct?
For Manistee Area Chamber of Commerce. And so we're going to talk all about innovation, Northern Michigan, and how that affects the chamber. And as we do in all of our podcasts, we first like to get to know Andrew a little bit. So that's what we'll do. We'll get started with a little bit about Andrew. What makes you tick?
Sure. So I guess we can hop right into it. A little bit about me. I was born and raised in Southeast Michigan, north of Detroit, and went to Michigan State for college.
All right, me too.
Go green.
Go white.
There it is. But outside of school, I returned to MSU for a master's in international planning studies, which is very much like urban planning, and really fell in love with community development and economic development and being able to support specifically rural communities. And so, what really drives me in my mission and work and as a director of economic development is really empowering communities so they can prosper.
Awesome.
And so that's really my mission and why I love what I do. And we'll obviously get into it here as to what economic development exactly is.
Perfect. So, why did you choose Manistee?
So for me, it was two factors. It was the job. I always wanted to do economic development, and I was working in Newaygo at the time, but I
Oh,
wanted to live farther north, and my love for fly fishing.
okay.
Manistee is one of the best counties in the state for fly
I
fishing,
had
and
no idea.
yep. And so that's one of the big pulls for me to move up to Manistee, but work
No pun
first.
intended.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I used to go fly fishing with my Uncle Lito. He had a piece of property out here in a pond, and he would fill that pond full of trout. And then we would feed them, but then it made the fly fishing as a young girl so much fun because
Sure.
it was a sure thing.
Yeah.
Every
Spoiled.
every time it was a sure thing, and they were big. They were probably this big.
Wow.
Yeah, he would keep that stocked for us.
Sure.
He spoiled us, but we enjoyed it. And really, once you get that bug for fly fishing, it's just such a thrill, isn't it?
Yeah. And for me, it's very therapeutic being able to go out into the national forest along the Manistee rivers and
Mm-hmm.
decompress, if you
Yeah.
will. And so that's how I view fly fishing. I'm not very good at catching, but I love just being able to walk the streams and,
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
have that serenity, and just scenic environment. It's
Oh,
very
that's
nice.
so beautiful. And his property actually is between here and Manistee. It's a little bit closer to Cadillac, but
Okay.
yeah, he bought that land back in, I think it was in 1932 or 3. And I think he ended up with about 250 acres, but at the time it had been clear cut
Okay.
when the lumber barons came through and pretty much, cut all of the
Yeah.
lumber. So it was maybe $1 or 2 an acre,
Wow.
believe it or not.
That is,
That's why he
I
got
wish
so
land was
much.
still going for that cheap.
But it's surrounded by the Manistee Huron National Forest. And so I am totally with you with the feeling and the serenity of up
Hmm.
north. But at the same time, we have a thriving economic area.
Yes, we do.
We
Yes.
really do, and we're going to get into that. So now that you know a little bit more about Andrew, and so do I, and love it, let's talk about Manistee and the chamber and how that all come about. Tell us a little bit more about the chamber.
Sure. So the Chamber of Commerce in Manistee, we're the Manistee Area Chamber of Commerce, and we serve the entire county of Manistee. So not just the city, but the entire county. And we're what's known as an economic development organization. So
Okay.
we spearhead all the economic growth efforts throughout the entire county. And we have four main pillars that really drive the Chamber of Commerce. We have our legislative advocacy,
Hmm.
where we advocate for our small businesses in kind of business best practices
Mm.
in Lansing and locally.
Mm.
We have economic development, which is a number of items, including business retention visits, site selection, um, real estate redevelopment. There's a lot of arms to economic development,
Mm.
but we also have leadership and workforce development, where we have a leadership cohort every year
Oh, wow.
that really helps bolster our young people throughout the community and gives them opportunities to become leaders
Hmm.
in Manistee County. And then we also have downtown revitalization. We also oversee the Downtown Development Authority in the city of Manistee.
Fantastic. Well, and I was just downtown Manistee a couple of months ago, and I love the building right there off the river where the college is now. It's such a beautiful building. So,
400 River Street, and
yeah.
I have the luxury to work there every day.
Oh, that's a beautiful building.
Yes,
It
it's
looks brand
lovely.
new.
Yeah, and it practically is. It got completely redone in 2020, 2021. And the chamber was lucky enough to be able to get space within that
Oh,
building and lease it from the college and have that be our new home.
that's awesome. Yeah, if you're in Manistee, you have to check it out. It is really beautiful. It's such a beautiful place, and it's really a vital city. I just love going to Manistee. One of the things that I think a lot of people uh, do enjoy and love is that you're right there on Lake Michigan, and that you have that beautiful harbor, and you have so many things going on in the summertime.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of our greatest assets, and for many northern Michigan communities, it really is what has been driving our economic success
Hmm.
in recent years. Is outdoor recreation, tourism, people falling in love with the lake shore and wanting
Hmm.
to get their own little piece of it, right? And
Right.
having second homes or moving full time up to these communities that in the 90s and 80s were a little smaller,
Sure.
a little more mom and pop, right?
Right, right. Well, that's fantastic. Well, get into it. Let's talk about what are those big opportunities in Manistee right now, and then let's pivot that to challenges. So, what are your opportunities and
Yeah,
challenges
absolutely.
going on?
And so I kind of will build off what I just said, where outdoor recreation and
Hmm.
tourism have exploded. I believe you've had the chance to talk to Sammy Lukaskevich,
Hmm.
our tourism authority director in Manistee County. And from 2011 to now, tourism has grown 143%.
Wow, I
Uh,
don't remember that stat.
yeah, as
Wow,
an industry,
what amazing statistic. 143%.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
And so that's really been our driver. And there's been a shift within our economy where it was based in manufacturing, heavy industry,
Hmm.
the use of our salt mines that we have underneath Manistee, and timber was really the original economic drivers for the city. But over the last 20 years, 30 years, it's really changed to tourism, outdoor recreation, and with that comes retail, small business, restaurants. And so that's what you're seeing our economic ecosystem becoming
Mhm. Mm.
now.
No, well, that makes sense, because it's really beautiful, and people have found it.
Yeah,
It's been a hidden
e-
gem, and
e-
now it's you've
exactly.
arrived, or they've arrived.
Exactly. And so that's really one of the opportunities
Yeah.
that Manistee has to offer is that outdoor rec, that beautiful scenery that people have started to take advantage of. And we still have a lot of heavy industry. And so there's some opportunity for industry clusters, any industry that uses sodium
Mm.
and is still heavy into lumber are really some assets that people can lean into from an economic standpoint. But some of those challenges that we are facing
Mm.
right now, because we're a smaller community and we're in a rural environment, it's childcare, it's housing, and it's workforce. And those are really big three that we're
Oh,
trying to solve for right now and
right.
assist people to, hey, how can we bring more childcare into our area? How can we attract young people who have the right skills to grow um, high skilled jobs in
Mm.
industries and bring them in?
Oh, that is, it's very, very pervasive. I think we see that here in Cadillac. I know they have that in Traverse City, especially the housing. There seems to be a high housing issue all across the United States.
Yep, yep, absolutely. I mean, and that's correct. Everybody's seeing it everywhere, but rural communities in particular are
Mm,
seeing an aging housing stock that's becoming less affordable and less attainable, where a couple decades ago, that was the pull for young
right.
people to live in rural communities, is you had a lower cost of living,
Mm,
where now housing so expensive,
mm,
it's still becoming out of reach,
yeah.
even in those rural communities. But it's everywhere, as you mentioned,
It,
pervasive. It's in the urban environment, it's in the rural environment, it's in Michigan,
mm-hmm.
it's all across the United
That's
States.
true. And I know that there's a lot of effort going on in northern Michigan for the 3D printing houses and some new innovative housing approaches. And so there's a lot of great minds working on those problems, as well as childcare and all the things that happen. And the neat thing about northern Michigan is that we have that spirit that is just undaunting because we are up here. It isn't as easy as it is in some other places, and so I'm sure we'll be able to tackle that.
Yeah.
No
Yep.
problem. And so I'm excited about economic development. I'm an entrepreneur. I
Yep.
started my own business and have another one going on right now. My daughter started her own. My mother had her own business, and so I'm very eager to understand how your chamber is really helping out those small businesses and startups. What are you guys doing in Manistee to help out small business?
Sure. So we view ourselves as almost this great connector.
Mm,
We are a connector for entrepreneurs, small businesses, innovators, existing businesses as well, to grow into the proper resources. And we're connecting them to financial tools as well as organizations such as 20 Fathoms, Venture North, Northern Initiatives, to address a lot of the needs. And so, with entrepreneurs, for example, who may not have a business plan and may just be starting out, that's where we'll connect them with the 20 Fathoms or the SBDC in Michigan, which is the Small Business Development Center.
mm,
And those organizations provide business coaching and business planning sessions. But most people who are getting into business aren't aware of the amount of support
mm.
that they have within their community.
Well, let's do a case study,
Sure,
just a hypothetical. How about that?
that works for me.
Okay, let's do a hypothetical. Let's say that we have a small business that, they've been around for maybe a couple, 3 or 4 years, and they've plateaued and they need to pivot. They're going to, let's say, maybe it's a hotel. Now they're going to open a restaurant too, or maybe vice versa. And they need to pivot. And they come to you and they're looking for not only financing, but guidance on, really how to do that. Would you point them to, what would you do? Would you go to 20 Fathoms, which we did have 20 Fathoms on the podcast, but maybe, or do you send them to Northern Initiative? Is that what you said?
Yep. So Northern Initiatives of CDFI, kind of community impact investing. So they
Okay.
kind of do ethical financing.
So let's say, okay, I'm gonna step back and say, okay, Andrew, help me. What do I do? I need about 50 grand. I want to pivot my business. I'm doing okay, but I'm a little bit stalled. What do you suggest?
Yeah. So in that situation, I would turn to our partners, most likely at the Small Business Development Center,
Mm-hmm.
and to our regional individual, Joni. She's fantastic in the Manistee area. And then also point you to Venture North, because Venture North would be that resource that would be able to assist from a financing
Oh,
standpoint.
fantastic.
But Joni would be able to really help navigate that expansion process. And I would be there for the ride. more
Excellent.
or less.
But
I'm
you do
that facilitator.
connect.
Yeah,
You
and I'm
connect.
that facilitator where rather than a small business owner having to go through the headache of identifying all those individuals, it's hey, come to me. We'll have irregular meetings, updates, and I'll assist in kind of figuring out the next best steps, so somebody doesn't have to stress about that.
Excellent, excellent. You're one of the resources that is because you always need someone to go to that maybe doesn't have a stake in the game.
Hmm.
I mean, of course, you want Manistee to thrive, but you don't work for these other entities,
Hmm.
so you can really be that. Um, you're there for the ride, but you're also there to coach.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really awesome. Now, how does that really play on your degree and your background? Did Michigan State prepare you for that?
So my background was in international development.
Okay.
So from a technical standpoint, my degree gave me the resources needed to understand economics, data analysis, anthropology, and through those analytical skills, I've been able to really thrive in my role in
Hmm.
Manistee. I would say it wasn't so much preparing me for business coaching or helping
Hmm.
entrepreneurs. I was really lucky in considering myself a bit of a socialite in being able to connect with people, and I'm an extrovert, so I love talking to people, and
Excellent.
that's kind of a majority of my
I love
job.
that because, we all pivot, businesses pivot and
Hmm.
people pivot. And I love that international aspect. And we should talk more because, I took my business to England and Singapore and other places. And at the end of the day, uh, it's all about serving your customer, but there's a lot of differences when you go into different countries, but it's different regions as well. I'm sure Manistee is different than Cadillac, than Traverse
Absolutely.
City, than whatever. So that would be a regular business. How about a startup?
Sure. So a startup would be, I would point them to 20 Fathoms because 20 Fathoms really has those resources and those innovators who have been there in
Well,
the
let's stop
startup
for a
field.
minute. Maybe somebody that's on this podcast listening, maybe they're unfamiliar with 20 Fathoms. Can you give us a short explanation of who and what is 20 Fathoms?
Sure. So 20 Fathoms is really a startup slash business incubator where they, similar to the Small Business Development Center, have individuals who are specialized in business coaching, particularly with that startup level. And so they're based
Okay.
out of Traverse City, but have expanded over the last couple of years to encapsulate our 10 county region, which is Northwest Michigan, going down from Manistee all the way up to, I believe it's Emmett County.
Fantastic. I know they cover Wexford as well.
Yep.
So that's fantastic. So they go to 20 Fathoms, and what would happen?
Sure. So 20 Fathoms they've been holding kind of one-on-one coaching sessions.
Hmm.
And so would be able to create that vision with you and walk you through that visioning process as to what your business is going to look like, what you want it to look like, what the financing structure is going to be, how are you going to charge people, or how much are you going to sell that product for, and they'll help you create that structure.
Awesome.
And so something I'll save that for later,
Sure,
actually.
sure. And so let's get into Manistee a little bit more. Let's do a deep dive into industry. You mentioned, the tourism. I actually am a packaging engineer for Michigan State, so I know they have Packaging Corp
Yes.
over
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Packaging Corporation of America is a little bit, I don't know if they're in Manistee. Is Filer City in Manistee County?
Yep, they are. And so that's right on Manistee Lake. Their industry is right on Manistee Lake, and they are a big employer for Manistee County.
Right. And then I know that is Arcadia in your county, and you've
Yes.
got that beautiful golf course
Yep, our
in
Arcadia
Arcadia.
Bluffs.
Yeah,
Yep.
let's talk about those industries a little bit more. And let's talk about you. And we did talk a little bit about the growth there. And how are the locals embracing this growth in your area and in the recreation and that type of thing? do they see that as a positive, or how's that going with the local, like the people that have been in the city for a while and they see all of this expansion?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so I've been in Manistee for 10 months now, so I can give my limited perspective
Sure.
on maybe what the true sentiments of the generational families have been in Manistee. From what I've seen, it's overall welcoming
Hmm.
for that recreation, for tourism. There's always going to be a cohort of people who hold on to the past and
Hmm.
want those head of household jobs are what they're called. That are more supplied through heavier industry and the manufacturers that have been in Manistee for decades at this point, and they're they still want that, so they want a balance. They
Balance.
want a balance is what I've seen.
Hmm.
They're not rejecting
Hmm.
tourism or outdoor rec, but they also want that balance of saying, "Hey, make sure that we still have these jobs that somebody can lead a household with."
Sure, and
Um,
preservation. I know that
mhm,
preservation is so important in communities as old as Manistee. Manistee is older than Cadillac, and Manistee is actually where my family started in Manistee. They emigrated from Canada into the US through Manistee, probably before it was even, I don't know, I wasn't 1850s or something like
I
that.
think it's a very old community.
Yeah, and then when the lumber came over to Cadillac, they moved in, became cooks in the lumber camps over here, and so I know there's a lot of history in
Yeah.
Manistee.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because people hold on to that. They cherish
They
that, and I
do.
think that's something that
Yeah, I have a plate my mother gave me from one of the Catholic churches that's an antique. It even says like 1870 something
wow.
on the back, and it's from one of the Catholic churches in Manistee
Okay.
that was where our family went to church back, ancestors did.
Sure,
So
sure.
that's an heirloom. Well, let's get into innovation. This is the Michigan Innovation Podcast, as anyway. So, how do you work with fostering innovation in Manistee?
Sure. So for us, it's really about getting into the businesses that a big focus for my role, I should say,
Sure.
is getting into the businesses that exist and meeting them where they're at. So then
Hmm.
we can assist and give ideas as to, hey, have you talked to this funding source? Or you guys might be ready and positioned to grow, or have you considered doing Industry 4.0, which is a technology-led manufacturing practice
Mm.
where you're integrating new cutting edge technology into your manufacturing processes.
Mm.
And so certain businesses that have existed for a while may have not considered new
Mhm.
avenues of how to evolve, how to keep up with market trends.
Mm.
And so through our business retention visit program, I'm able to sit with business owners, kind of see where they're at, see what their needs are,
Mhm.
whether that's workforce or capital access, and also point out, hey, have you considered this
Mm.
market or
Mhm.
that market? So that's one of the ways.
Excellent, excellent. That's really what an owner may need. Just a little shower, just a little encouragement, and also to say, hey, just awareness.
Mhm.
Because sometimes when you are running a business, your head's down and you are just,
Yep.
barreling through the day. So God bless you for that. And so let's talk about economic development projects that you have going on. I know that you have a lot cooking in Manistee. So, what are some of the projects you are and initiatives that you have in the works?
Sure. So one of the bigger, kind of more exciting projects that we have that some may have seen is the Gateway Project.
Mm.
Downtown Manistee has two blocks right at the beginning of River Street that are currently vacant. But the Little River Holdings, the economic development arm for the Little River Band of Ottawa Indians,
Uh huh.
uh, is doing a project there to add a boutique hotel, additional commercial space, some
Oh.
parking, but it's going to be transformative. It's going to transform the community and be excellent. Everybody's very excited about that within the community, and just really trying to get that project off the ground
Oh
through our
wow.
access with the DDA.
Mhm.
Some other projects that we have are the Riley Apartments that are coming online here over the next year or two, which is going to be 288 market rate apartments.
Wow.
And so we talk about housing.
That's
That's a big dent
huge.
for a
That's
community like
awesome.
Manistee. Yeah,
Congratulations.
so those are
Wow.
some of those more exciting, tangible
Mhm.
projects
Mhm.
that we have. From an initiative standpoint, we are continuing to kind of build our partnerships with 20 Fathoms, SBDC, as well as the Community Foundation to continue to give lunch and learns and educational sessions to our business owners so that they're up to speed. Um, in particularly the Earn Six Time Act that just got put into law here in
Right.
February
February.
impacted a lot of business owners.
Mhm.
And so that was something we were able to partner with a attorney from Grand Rapids and get him up here to give a deep dive into the changes, what business owners needed to know to help our business community stay up to speed.
Fantastic. I'm sure they really appreciated
Yeah.
that and really decluttered it and made it clear.
Yeah.
You know, what I found is a lot of the people already were doing some of those things. They just had to reshuffle it a little bit.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
most people have a heart and they really want to make sure that their employees are whole, no matter if they're sick or not.
Hmm.
And so, but I think that some don't. And so that's what forced that hand, I
Yeah.
suppose, in that law. But it seemed like a little bit of a shuffling to a lot of the folks that I've met that went through it. And for me personally, and my daughter's company, we've pretty much already had sick time, paid timely, you know, off. And so, but it's good to make sure that everyone is whole,
Hmm.
you know, because we all do need that from time to time. So, let's move into new business. How do you attract? What does the chamber do to attract businesses into Manistee? I was on a call the other day with a man who was working with a developer, and he wanted to put a big factory on the Great Lakes in a port city. And I thought of Manistee immediately. He wanted it on one of the port cities around Lake Michigan. And so I did mention it to someone at 20 Fathoms. I haven't circled back to them, but let's say, what would you do with that kind of an opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. And so business attraction, there's kind of multiple approaches that a chamber takes. There's the long-term game. And so the long-term game is creating a community of choice, creating a community where we have that workforce, we have the housing, we have the childcare, we have site selections, we have incentives to draw people in. In the short term, in an opportunity such as that, that is really identifying those contacts, identifying those businesses that are ready to expand that might be looking at Manistee and giving them that first nudge, reaching out, having that phone call and saying, have you considered Manistee? I have a site here. And so that's really the process that we take is making that first reach out, be
Mm,
proactive about
mm-hmm,
our business attraction and trying to identify what might fit our community needs, what is going to increase our community vibrancy, but also what's going to provide us jobs that
mm,
are quality and
mm-hmm,
long lasting and sustainable.
mm, mm-hmm. That makes sense. And so basically, you just want to get those introductions, and then you're ready to explain to them the benefit of Manistee
Exactly,
and
exactly.
how and all of those pillars that you brought up,
Hmm.
the housing, the childcare, but you also vet them to make sure that they're bringing in a business that would be desirable for your community.
Yeah, exactly. And so the long-term game is the harder portion of that is trying to create those resources that draw people in, the
Mm-hmm.
childcare, the great schools,
Sure.
all those are that's a decades long process of
Mm-hmm.
creating a community that's development ready that people look at and say, oh, this is a local unit of government that I can operate in. The permitting process easy and clean. It has that workforce that I'm looking for.
Perfect. You sure know your stuff. I
Yeah.
love that. I love the way that you're able to really just hit those important bullets in the area of economic development and attracting businesses to Manistee. What about talent? What about the young professional or the young, vibrant, worker that would do that? How do you draw talent into Manistee?
Yeah, and so talent is tricky to pull in for rural communities because over the last several decades, there's been this bleed of young people away from rural communities. And COVID and with remote work, there was this switch that people started to prioritize quality of life a little more. And we've received more young people back into rural communities over recent years. However, many still struggle with a general loss rather than a gain, a total loss rather than a gain in the younger demographic. From a business standpoint, to really attract those young people, we have to remain competitive as rural communities from a pay standpoint, from a quality of life standpoint. Down on you're in northern Michigan and your backyard is where your hobbies are
Mhm.
is a great way to draw people in and continuing that narrative and working with our tourism bureaus and authorities to continue to help push that messaging out
Mm,
is really vital. And
absolutely.
so I know that's why I came to Manistee. I'm an
Hmm.
example of that, of saying I love fly fishing. I want to do this line of work, and the
What
stars
a good
aligned and I was
fit.
able to go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what a good fit.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Right. Well, it is a beautiful place to raise a family as well. You can pretty much can kind of control their environment a little bit. When you're in a smaller community. I know that we enjoy. My granddaughters go to a little Catholic school down the road, and it's just small and intimate. And I know that Northern Michigan offers that probably in Manistee as well.
Sure.
That's awesome. Well, let's talk about the future. Let's talk about what does Manistee see for, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years in the future,
Sure.
like in the area of innovation,
Yeah.
business development, that type of thing.
Yeah, and so Manistee over the next 5 to 10 years, due to its history, Manistee has almost lagged behind slightly other communities and has now just started to catch up
Hmm.
over the last decade. And that's because Manistee wasn't identified as a vacation tourism town until more recently,
Hmm.
within the last 20 years compared to Frankfurt or Ludington that had, or Charlevoix, Petoskey that have
Hmm.
been destination community for the last 40, 50 years
Right.
for people from Chicago.
Sure.
And so, given our history, the next 5 to 10 years is really about continuing to catch up,
Hmm.
continuing to, you know, increase our property values, make them comparable with Frankfurt and Ludington, and continuing to build out that ecosystem that supports outdoor rec and
Hmm.
tourism. And a couple things is continuing to create a vibrant downtown.
Mm.
Get rid of certain vacancies in our downtown where buildings have just been sitting there for the last 15 years vacant and are somewhat blighted.
Mm.
How can we transform those properties to create a more lively town where
Yeah.
people want to stay, they want to walk around and shop?
Hmm. Fantastic. Yeah, I can see that. And I think that I really think it's a beautiful, and I think it is, like you say, it is a little bit behind the Traverse Cities and Charlevoix, but I think that's what makes it special.
And that's what needs to be protected as well.
Yes.
Is when we talk about balance, because we're behind, we can look at a place like Traverse City or Charlevoix and say, "Oh, we don't like that aspect. We don't like the
Right.
congestion of
Right.
or the traffic or the layout." And we can build a community that not only is going to support jobs in
Right.
industry, but it's going to support the tourism. And it's going to be that balancing act, but
Sure.
it's going to keep the character of the town the
I love
same.
that. I think you got an edge there. So let's get back to entrepreneurship and startups. What advice? I know you have whether you've only been in the job for a year or so. I am really impressed with your depth and range here. And so, what advice would you give to an entrepreneur looking to, go ahead and start a business in Manistee?
Sure. I would say get connected. That's the biggest thing. Get connected because, as I mentioned earlier, most entrepreneurs, most people starting a business don't realize the tsunami of resources that they have, even in a rural community. And that's amazing, but that's a misconception is rural communities don't have resources. They lack dynamic and culture where that's really not the case. It's just structured differently.
Mhm.
And you need to be connected to know that those resources exist. So when you're starting a business, I would really say get connected. Get connected to your local chamber, get connected with your business leaders, with your downtown development authority, with your local unit of government, because those people know where certain resources are that the rest of people who don't operate in those circles wouldn't ever know of.
So they would give you a call, Andrew?
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. So as easy as picking up the phone and calling you?
That's right.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's not that hard, I would think. That's great. Does the chamber offer any specific resources or mentorship programs that, I give you a call, hey, Andrew, I want to start this new business. I'm going to start a pet shop, grooming, uh, boarding kennel. Um,
Perfect industry for Manistee.
really?
Yeah, we could use one
All
or two.
right, all right, let's go for it. So, hey, Andrew, I want to do that. Where should I go? I need to be connected, I've been told.
Sure. And so I would tell you, we have an exciting boot camp with 20 Fathoms. 20 Fathoms, as I'd mentioned, is a startup kind of incubator in Traverse City, and they've been doing boot camps for us down in our local community college building that you had mentioned earlier in the
Mhm.
podcast.
Yeah.
And it's a 4 day long, 2 week process where it's a Monday and a Wednesday night where you can come and really sit with business professionals and help start that business vision. And so we have one coming up here in April, which is very exciting. But that would really be the first lead I would go with. Is if we have a resource like that, like a boot camp coming up,
Hmm.
or a business coaching session coming up, that's where I'm pointing you.
Okay, so I would come to the river property, the River Street
Yeah,
property,
yeah, 400 River Street.
400 River Street. Well, I give you a call, sign up for this class. How much does it cost?
And so the boot camp is completely free, I believe.
Awesome. So I would be able to come in. It's 4 sessions. What it for like 2 weeks?
Across 2 weeks. So Monday and
Okay.
a Wednesday, two and back-to-back
Ah,
weeks.
fantastic. Great, great. And so with that, what would I walk out the door with? Do I have a business plan or what do I walk out the door with?
Yep. So that you would be able to walk out with they provide materials to the participants, and you would be able to walk out with a business plan and some other visioning documents, such as a business plan that might break down some nitty gritties for
Awesome.
you in the operations of a startup.
Fantastic. Well, have you been doing this for very long? Is this a new thing?
So the boot camps at 20 Fathoms are fairly new. They've only happened once before in the fall of 24. And so we're really excited to be able to partner with 20 Fathoms again and bring them back in
Back
just
by
the,
popular demand.
yes, by popular demand. And they have pretty much filled up. And so we're hoping that we can continue to have these on a biannual basis.
Excellent.
But outside of the 20 Fathoms resources that we also have continual programming where we partner with, we do small business resource like summits in economic summits with West Shore Community College, which are continual and annual. And those are resources that can be really great for
Fantastic.
small
Now, where
businesses.
would I be able to find all on your website?
Yep, right
Okay.
on the Manistee Area Chamber of Commerce website.
So what you went, I know they've had that cohort and the boot camp. What were some of the misconceptions that people have about starting a business in Manistee? Do they walk in the door with one perception and then they're surprised by a uh, misconception that they may have had that's no longer
Sure.
in their sphere of thought?
Sure. So, as I had mentioned, I think the biggest misconception in starting a business, especially in a rural community, is the lack of resources, which as we've been talking about,
Sure.
isn't true. We have a dynamic ecosystem for entrepreneurs and businesses that help support them. That are It's different than in urban areas such as Grand Rapids or Detroit, but we still have a robust network of individuals looking to support our business community. And second, I think another misconception is that doing business is easy.
Mm.
Sometimes I haven't met too many people who fully dove into that misconception. However, I have seen it that doing business is easy. Being a small business owner is by no means easy. It is relentless and can just take everything out of somebody. And so I think having a realistic view on what being a small business owner really means is important. And there's some misconceptions saying, oh, they can kick their feet up, determine their own schedule. It's great, no stress. Where most small business owners I know and operate with who are successful are always working, just relentless with trying to innovate their business and trying to keep up with market trends. And so it's a lot of work. It keeps people busy, but there is that freedom that eventually comes with a successful small business operation.
I agree. I went to one of the, not that particular, but I've been in meetings where there are small startup entrepreneurs, and they're more like running away from a job rather than having the passion to do what to do a new business or that. And I would say that would be a misconception. It's not something that will be easier than your job, or less stressful than your job.
Yeah.
So there is that passion component that I believe needs to be a component of any small business. That's just from my point of view. So, workforce development and job creation. I don't know if we talked about that yet, but I'm curious about how, we've got the workforce, people are in the trenches, they're cranking it out in Manistee, they're working. How do you help those guys?
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
people that are already there, and they may need some guidance in developing their careers or their knowledge, that
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yeah. And so we're really lucky because we have in the West Shore building in downtown Manistee, we also work closely with Michigan Works, which
Mm.
is the state's kind of career development arm. And so when I do a lot of my business retention visits, I also have Michigan Works staff with me as well as individuals from the MEDC. But the Michigan Works staff really come in with this depth of knowledge with workforce development in state resources and grants to help people who are already in the workforce develop further skills to
Mhm.
become more dynamic and become more valuable assets for that company. And so Michigan Works just had an exciting round called Going Pro, which was a grant that would help offset professional development costs that led to a certification.
Oh,
And so we
fantastic.
worked with a lot of our manufacturers, or rather, Michigan Works worked with a lot of our manufacturers to let them know that that was a resource out there and help set up training programs to pay for the business, or sorry, the professional development.
Fantastic. That's great. I know, because sometimes when you're trying to meet the bottom line as a business owner, great service.
Yeah, and we also at the chamber have our leadership cohort, which is an excellent way where we are actively helping employers develop some of their key employees to be ready for those leadership roles too. And so the chamber's leadership program is across 9 months, and it's just a really exciting program where we are able to connect young, not only young professionals, but just professionals who are about to take that next step into leadership roles, and help give them the skills and knowledge they need to be
Hmm.
effective leaders within our community, but then within their organization.
Well, I think the leadership is something that you're not, some people say they're born, but I also know that if you even are born a born leader, there's awareness and learning your community. And so could you give us an idea of what those 9, that's a long time to be in a program. What can you give us a little bit of break it down a little for
Yep,
me?
absolutely. And so the leadership program is 1 day a month
Okay.
where it's a full day of uh, I guess, sorry, let me backtrack. So they meet 1 day a month.
Mm-hmm.
They have what they call a class project,
Mm-hmm.
which is going to be a community-oriented project. For example, this year's cohort's doing sensory boards across the county. And so that's kind of what they're creating and giving back to the community.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a portion of the day is working on that class project. But then it's touching each industry within our county. So they have an industrial day, a history day, a legislative advocacy day, and a multitude of others where they are pretty much spending it going to places in hearing lectures of uh, what that specific topic pertains to. And so for Legislative Advocacy Day, they were just down in Lansing, for example, um, visiting with our legislators and kind of learning what um, happens within our state government,
Mm-hmm.
really. And so that's something giving them that depth where people step into leadership roles might have to be a little more savvy with policy and policies that are affecting their industry.
That's so they spend time in all sorts of industries, a day immersed aspect of the community, it sounds like. What project? What is a sensory board?
Sure. So a sensory board, I know I kind of just threw it out there and left it hanging,
I know
but
I think I know what it is, but you tell me if I'll figure out if I'm right.
sure. So a sensory board is going to it's almost like a public art project that's functional. And so it's a board just about as big as this table that has all different types of stones, bumps, ridges, textures to it, where people who are um, may have autism or Down syndrome or some type of sensory disorder
Mm-hmm.
um, can kind of come up and touch in its I couldn't really explain to you the entirety of the
Sure.
like the meaning behind it, but I guess there is some benefit in having those
Absolutely.
boards around, and
Right.
it's something that people who have those sensory issues can normally interact with in a safe way.
Awesome. Well, I think that's what a big heart. Sounds like this leadership class of what 2025 you have a big heart over there in
Yep.
Manistee
Yep, absolutely. And
because that a lot of those people are marginalized and they're not included in the playgrounds or the sandboxes or whatever. And you have to speak someone's language, and if it's not sight and sound and it's more touch, that's amazing.
yeah,
Good
yeah,
for them.
yeah. And the leadership program's really run by other staff members
Mm-hmm.
in the chamber organization. And
Sure.
so they've really had that depth of knowledge that I might be
Sure.
lacking right
Well,
now.
you're great. I am totally really covering all of the aspects. Chambers. I've had a couple of. I've had Traverse City are really doing amazing.
Oh, thank
So appreciate your time today so much. And so I know we've talked a lot about tourism, and let's talk a little bit, compare and contrast. Let's compare and contrast innovation in Manistee, Northern Michigan, in the state of Michigan. So how do you relate and interrelate with different communities in and around our state?
Um,
In the area of innovation,
sure.
development of
Sure.
business.
So we have kind of a cohesive network from an innovation standpoint. I really relate to Northwestern Michigan because we have that 10 county region, which is one ecosystem. And that
Mhm.
whole ecosystem is helping one another,
Mhm.
really. So, 20 Fathoms in SBDC, they're covering the 10 county region, and those are resources that we all connect with. And I have a quarterly meeting with other economic development professionals throughout the 10 county region. So we feel very connected. And if we're rowing in the same direction as a region,
Mhm.
and then as a state, obviously we have the Michigan Economic Development Corporation kind of giving us a state strategy for targets that and industries that they're trying to target and bring into Michigan. And, I think as a state, something that I'm really attracted to being here from an innovation standpoint is how lucky we are with our freshwater resource.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I know Traverse City has some very exciting educational opportunities coming out with the Freshwater Research Center opening up there. And I think being able to have that resource and then leverage it for industry and education and research is just an amazing thing that we need to kind of keep pushing. And anybody who can kind of tap into that freshwater resource and create innovation around it. That's what I love about being in Michigan, because there is a
Absolutely.
lot of that happening here because we have some of the most fresh water in the world.
Well, it sounds like you're working in a very inclusive, collaborative environment,
Mhm.
whether it's Lansing, MEDC, Northern Michigan, the 10 counties. It sounds like Manistee is really playing and collaborating with their own teams and their own community, but also leveraging the resources across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're always talking with different communities as to, hey, how did this work for you? What's another way to go about doing a certain project or bringing somebody into your community?
Well, listening to all these initiatives, and we talked about your website. Uh, can you tell us what the website is
Sure. So it's the Manistee Area Chamber of Commerce.com.
and your phone number?
So my phone number is 248-425-7117.
I wanted to just make sure, is there anything else that you wanted to share with us about what's happening in Manistee?
And bring a lot of real estate developers to our county, highlight some important sites. That's a really exciting initiative we have, but just a lot of good momentum happening in Manistee. And I think a lot of people feel that as they walk into our community.
I do, and the inertia is obvious. And to have a high quality representative and the director of economic development, they, in my personal opinion, couldn't be more fortunate to have Andrew with us today and with the chamber over there. So I'm going to ask you another question. Will you come back and see us in about a year?
Of course, I'd be happy to.
Oh,
Thanks for having me
Andrew.
on.
Oh, Andrew, it'd be great. And with that, we're going to say goodbye.